The explosion threw Ambassador Cirrus Velan against the wall. Her thin, insect-like body hit the metal hard, and she felt two of her legs crack. Pain shot through her, but she forced herself to stand. Around her, the research station was dying. Whispered Dawn had been her home for 12 years. The Valkyrie Concorde's greatest achievement. A place where scientists studied the mysteries of deep space. A place of peace and learning. Now fire burned in the corridors. Bodies of her people lay scattered on the floor. The screams of the dying filled the air. Another explosion shook the station. Cirrus grabbed a support beam and held on. Through the viewport, she could see the enemy ships. Dozens of them. Black vessels covered in spikes and weapons. The symbol of the Kreth Dominion burned on their hulls like a wound. The Kreth. Slavers. Harvesters. They had destroyed 17 civilizations across 3,000 years. They did not conquer worlds for territory or resources. They conquered worlds for people. Living beings were their product, their cargo, their food. And now they had come for the Valkyrie. A young researcher ran toward Cirrus. His name was Tovin, barely an adult by their species standards. Green blood ran from a wound on his head. His compound eyes were wide with terror. "Ambassador," he gasped. "The outer sections are lost. They're boarding us. We have maybe 2,000 survivors retreating to the inner core." Cirrus closed her eyes. 2,000. The station had held over 8,000. Valkyrie, scientists, engineers, families, children. 6,000 dead in less than an hour. What about our defense fleet? She asked, already knowing the answer. Tovin's antennae drooped. Destroyed. All 12 ships. The Kreth. They didn't even slow down. Of course they didn't. The Valkyrie were not warriors. They were thinkers, dreamers. Their ships carried sensors and laboratories, not weapons. They had joined the Galactic Assembly believing that civilization meant safety. That reason would triumph over violence. They had been fools. "Get everyone to the inner core," Cirrus ordered. "Seal every door. Buy us time." "Time for what?" Tovin asked. "No one is coming. We sent distress calls to the Assembly. They said they would file a formal protest." A formal protest. While the Kreth dragged Valkyrie children into harvesting pods. While her people were sorted into categories. Workers, breeders, meat. Cirrus felt something she had never felt before. Not fear, not despair, rage. Pure and burning rage at a galaxy that would let this happen. And civilizations that called themselves advanced but watched from safety while others died. Then she remembered the device. It sat in her private quarters, locked in a box she had not opened in 30 years. A gift from a strange species that had joined the Assembly 3 centuries ago. A species that other races found amusing, confusing, slightly unsettling. The humans. She remembered the day. The human ambassador had given her the device. A small woman with brown skin and silver hair. She had smiled in that strange way humans did, showing her teeth like a predator. "Keep this somewhere safe," the human had said. "If your people ever face extinction, if all hope is gone, press the button. We'll come." Cirrus had laughed politely. Humans were so odd. They lived barely a century. They had no natural weapons. Their bodies were soft and weak. Their technology was unremarkable. What could they possibly do against a threat like the Kreth? She had thrown the device in a box and forgotten about it. Now she ran. Her broken legs screamed in pain, but she ran. Through burning corridors and over the bodies of her friends. Past Kreth soldiers who had already begun dragging captives toward their ships. She was small, fast. She knew hidden paths through the station. Her quarters were half destroyed. The ceiling had collapsed, but the box was still there, buried under debris. She tore it open with shaking hands. The device was simple. Black metal, one red button. No instructions. No explanations. What could humans do? The question echoed in her mind. The answer was probably nothing. They were probably just as helpless as everyone else. Pressing this button would accomplish nothing except give her false hope in her final moments. But her people were dying. Her children were being taken, and the galaxy had abandoned them. Cirrus pressed the button. Nothing happened. No sound. No light. No confirmation that the signal had been sent. For all she knew, the device was broken. Useless. A cruel joke. She let it fall from her hands and wept far away. In a part of the galaxy most species never visited. Something woke up. On Earth, in a room buried deep beneath a mountain, a console began to flash red. Then another. Then 100. Then 1,000. Officers who had spent their entire careers waiting for this moment suddenly found themselves running, shouting, activating protocols that existed only in classified files. On Mars, soldiers looked up from their training as every communication device on the planet screamed the same alert. On Titan, on Europa, on 100 colony worlds scattered across human space, the same message appeared on every screen. Beacon activated. Species, Veltari. Location, Kepler 442. Aggressor, Creth Dominion. Response, Protocol, Omega. Admiral Helena Vance was 63 years old. She had commanded human fleets for 4 decades. She had trained for this moment since she was a young officer. She had begun to believe it would never come. Her hands did not shake as she opened the channel to every human military vessel in existence. All ships, she said, her voice calm and cold. This is Admiral Vance. We have received a valid beacon activation. The Veltari are dying. The Creth are killing them. She paused. Across human space, millions of soldiers listened. We made a promise. Today, we keep it. All fleets set course for Kepler 442. Maximum speed. We will arrive in 6 hours. She closed the channel and looked at her tactical display. Over 4,000 warships were already moving. Dreadnoughts that had not fired their weapons in decades. Carrier groups loaded with fighters and bombers. Assault transports packed with Marines who had spent their lives preparing for exactly this kind of fight. The humans were coming, and they were bringing everything. On whispered dawn, Cirrus did not know any of this. She huddled in the dark with the other survivors, listening to the Creth cut through the doors. She had perhaps 4 hours of air left on. She had pressed the button. She had done everything she could. Now she could only wait and pray to gods she wasn't sure existed. Help was coming. She just didn't know it yet. Admiral Helena Vance stood in the command center of the Ion's Vengeance and watched her fleet come together. Ships poured in from every corner of human space. Destroyers and cruisers formed protective screens around the massive dreadnoughts. Carriers launched thousands of fighters that flew in perfect formation. Troop transports fell into line, their hulls packed with soldiers ready to fight. It was the largest military gathering in human history, and it had taken less than 2 hours to organize. Fleet status? Vance asked. Her second-in-command, Captain Marcus Chun, checked his displays. 4,200 capital ships confirmed and in formation. 15,000 support craft. 97,000 fighters and bombers. 300,000 Marines standing by for boarding operations. Time to target? 5 hours and 42 minutes at maximum speed. Vance nodded. The Veltari would be running out of air soon. It would be close. Very close. Push the engines harder, she ordered. I want us there in 5 hours. Admiral, that will burn out at least 30% of our ship's engines. Then we'll tow them home after. Move. Across the fleet. Engineers pushed their reactors beyond safe limits. Ships that were designed to last centuries burned through their engines in hours. None of them complained. None of them hesitated. The beacon had been activated. Everything else was secondary. In the intelligence section of the Vengeance, Lieutenant Sarah Park studied everything humanity knew about the Kreth Dominion. It wasn't much. The Kreth kept to themselves. They attacked weak species and avoided strong ones. They had never shown interest in humans. That was about to change. What do we know about their fleet? Vance asked, appearing at Park's station. Based on intercepted communications, approximately 800 warships attacked the Veltary station. Heavy cruisers and assault carriers, mostly. They favor close-range combat and boarding actions. Weapons? Plasma cannons. Missile systems. Nothing we can't handle. Park hesitated. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Go ahead. The Kreth have destroyed 17 civilizations. They've been doing this for 3,000 years. They're going to wonder why we're responding like this. They might think it's a trap. Vance smiled. It was not a warm smile. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Fear is a weapon too. On the Kreth command carrier Eternal Dominion, Warlord Desok was not afraid. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had harvested millions of slaves. The Veltary were simply the latest addition to his collection. His intelligence officer, a scarred veteran named Crix, approached with a report. His claws clicked nervously on the deck. Warlord, we are detecting unusual activity in human space. Desok barely looked up from his meal. Fresh meat from a Veltary he had personally selected. Humans? Those soft little creatures from the poison world. What about them? Their military vessels are mobilizing. All of them. Now Desok looked up. All of them? How many is that? Crix checked his data pad. Over 4,000 capital ships. Many times more support craft. They appear to be heading directly toward this system. Desok stared at his officer for a long moment. Then he laughed. A deep, rumbling sound that shook his massive body. For the Veltary? They're sending their entire fleet to save a species they've barely had contact with. How wonderfully stupid. Should we prepare defenses? Why? We have 800 ships. More than enough to crush any rescue attempt. Desok returned to his meal. The humans are soft. Everyone knows this. Their own intelligence reports say they form emotional attachments to other species. They weaken themselves with compassion. Crix did not leave. Warlord, there is something else. We are detecting weapon signatures we cannot identify. Our computers have no data on these systems. Unknown weapons? Desok waved a claw dismissively. The humans have been part of the assembly for 3 centuries. Their technology is well documented. Primitive by our standards. These signatures do not match assembly records. For the first time, a small seed of doubt entered Desok's mind. He crushed it immediately. He was Vesok, destroyer of worlds. He had never lost a battle. He would not start worrying about a rescue mission from the galaxy's most pathetic species. Continue the harvest, he ordered. By the time the humans arrive, we will have taken every Veltary and left nothing but an empty station. Let them rescue ghosts. Crix bowed and left. But his claws kept clicking nervously. He had studied humans for years. Something about them had always bothered him. Not their strength. Not their technology. Something else. In the old records, there was a note. A warning from a Kreth scout who had observed Earth centuries ago. He had watched humans hunting. He had watched them wage war on each other. He had written one sentence that Crix had never forgotten. These creatures smile before they kill. On Earth, in a small apartment in a city called Tokyo, an old woman watched the news. The government had announced the mobilization. Ships were leaving orbit. Soldiers were marching onto transports. Her grandson, a Marine named Kenji, had called her before he left. "Grandmother, I have to go. There are people who need help." "What people?" she had asked. "I don't know them. I'd never met them. But someone pressed the beacon. That means they're dying. That means they need us." The old woman had not cried. She had simply told him to come home safely. To make her proud, now she sat by her window and watched the lights of departing ships streak across the sky. So many of them. Thousands and thousands of humans leaving everything behind to save. Strangers, other species called humans. Soft, weak, emotional. They said it like it was an insult. They didn't understand. Humans had spent their entire history fighting. Fighting each other. Fighting nature. Fighting death itself. They knew war better than any species in the galaxy. They had created weapons that could crack planets. They had built engines that could cross the stars. But they had also built something else. Something no weapon could match. They had built a promise. "We will protect you. We will fight for you. We will die for you if we must. Not because you are strong. Not because you are useful. But because you asked for help. Because you needed us. Because that is what family is." The beacon was that promise made real. And 4,000 warships were the answer. In 5 hours. The Kreth would learn what other species had learned throughout human history. They would learn why humanity's neighbors called them the sleeping wolf. They would learn that soft hearts did not mean soft fists. They would learn that the most dangerous creature in the galaxy was a human protecting someone they loved. Admiral Vance watched the stars blur past as her fleet raced toward Kepler to 442. Her face was calm. Her hands were steady. But inside, something old and powerful was waking up. Righteous anger. The fury of the Protector. The cold, terrible patience of a predator closing in on its prey. The Kreth had killed innocents. They had taken children. They had assumed no one would stop them. They were wrong. "All ships," Vance announced. "Final systems check. Load all weapons. In 4 hours, we teach the galaxy what happens when you hurt the people we protect." Across the fleet, humans checked their weapons and said their prayers. Some were afraid. All of them were determined. The Velthari had called for help. Humanity was answering. Cirrus could hear them cutting through the doors. The survivors had gathered in the station's inner core. 2,000 Velthari pressed together in the darkness. The power had failed hours ago. Emergency lights cast red shadows on terrified faces. Children cried softly while their parents held them close. The air was growing thin. Each breath felt harder than the last. "How long?" Cirrus asked the engineer beside her. 3 hours of oxygen. Maybe less. 3 hours. And the cutting sounds were getting closer. The Kreth would reach them long before the air ran out. A young mother approached Cirrus. She carried 2 children in her arms. Her compound eyes were wet with tears. "Ambassador, is anyone coming? Did anyone hear our call?" Cirrus thought of the button she had pressed. The device that had done nothing. The silence that had followed. "Yes," she lied. "Help is coming. We just need to hold on." The mother nodded and returned to her children. Cirrus watched her go and felt the weight of her lie crushing her chest. No one was coming. The galaxy had abandoned them. In 3 hours, she and everyone she was sworn to protect would be dragged into Kreth harvesting pods. On the other side of the doors, the Kreth worked with patient efficiency. Sergeant Vrak led the boarding team. He had done this 1,000 times. Cut through the doors. Stun the survivors. Sort them by age and health. Load them onto transports. Simple work. How many inside? He asked his scanner operator. Approximately 2,000. Mostly adults. Some children. No weapons detected. Vrak made a satisfied sound. Children were valuable. The Dominion's clients paid extra for young ones. They were easier to train, easier to break. Speed up the cutting. I want this finished before the human ships arrive. The humans? His subordinate laughed. What will they do? Write a strongly worded letter? The Kreth soldiers laughed together. The idea of humans being a threat was the funniest joke they had heard in years. Far above the station, Warlord Desok watched the human fleet approaching. His sensors showed thousands of ships moving at impossible speeds. Their engines were burning so hot, they left trails of light across space. Something was wrong. Intelligence, he barked. Report on human vessel classifications. Crix appeared on his screen. Warlord, we are having difficulty identifying many of these ships. They do not match any designs in the Galactic Assembly database. What do you mean? The larger vessels in the center of their formation. We have no records of them. They are massive, larger than our command carriers. And they are carrying weapons we cannot classify. Desok felt that seed of doubt growing again. Larger than command carriers? Unclassified weapons? How was this possible? Humans were supposed to be weak. Everyone said they were weak. It doesn't matter, he said, more to convince himself than his officer. We outnumber them. We have better training. We have 3,000 years of experience. They will arrive in approximately 90 minutes. Then we have 90 minutes to finish the harvest and leave. Desok straightened in his command chair. Increase the pace. I want every Veltari loaded and ready to transport within the hour. On the station, the cutting sound stopped. A terrible silence fell over the survivors. Then the doors exploded inward. Kreth soldiers poured into the room. Tall, armored, their insectoid faces twisted into expressions of cruel hunger. They moved with brutal efficiency, grabbing Veltari and throwing them toward the exits. Cirrus tried to fight. She threw herself at a soldier twice her size. He swatted her aside like an insect. She hit the wall and felt her remaining good leg shatter. Through the pain, she watched her people being taken. The mother with 2 children was screaming as soldiers tore her family apart. The young researcher Tovan tried to protect a group of elderly scientists and was beaten unconscious. This was the end. This was how the Veltari would die. Not in battle, not in glory, but dragged away like animals to be sold, broken, consumed. Cirrus closed her eyes and waited for the soldiers to take her. Then something changed. She felt it before she heard it. A vibration in the station's hull. Deep, powerful, growing stronger. The Kreth soldiers stopped. They looked up, confused. Through the shattered viewport, light was flooding into space. Not the cold light of stars. Something else. Something brighter. Thousands of points of light appearing out of nowhere, filling the darkness like a sunrise. A Kreth soldier checked his communicator. His armored face went pale. What is it? Another soldier demanded. The humans. They're here. Impossible. They weren't supposed to arrive for another hour. They pushed their engines past breaking point. They came faster. Cirrus opened her eyes. Through the viewport, she could see them now. Ships. So many ships. An armada that stretched across the stars. And in the center, massive vessels that dwarfed everything around them. Ships that looked like they had been built for one purpose, only. War.A. Broadcast cut through every frequency. A human voice. Female. Cold as ice. This is Admiral Helena Vance of the United Human Navy. You are attacking a species under our protection. You have 6 minutes to withdraw from this system. Silence. After that, we will demonstrate why humanity's neighbors call us the sleeping wolf. This is your only warning. For a long moment, no one moved. The Kreth soldiers stared at the human fleet. The Velthari stared at their rescuers. The universe held its breath. Then Warlord Desok's voice came over the Kreth communication network. "Ignore them. They are bluffing. Continue the harvest. All ships, attack formation." The Kreth fleet began to move. 800 warships arranging themselves for battle. Weapons charging. Fighters launching. Admiral Vance watched them from the bridge of the Vengeance. Her face showed no emotion. Her voice remained calm. "They're not withdrawing," Captain Chun reported. "No, they're not. Admiral, your orders?" Vance looked at the tactical display. 2,000 Velthari lives hanging in the balance. 800 enemy ships preparing to fight. And behind her, 4,000 human warships ready to answer a 300-year-old promise. "All ships," she said. "Weapons free. Show them what we are." The human fleet opened fire, and the stars themselves seemed to burn. Inside the station, Cirrus watched the battle begin. Human weapons carved through space like lightning from an angry god. Kreth ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were torn apart in seconds. A Kreth soldier grabbed her, trying to use her as a shield or hostage. Before he could move, something crashed through the wall behind him. A figure in powered armor. Human. The soldier on its chest patch showed a screaming eagle. The human marine fired once. The Kreth soldier fell. Then the marine knelt beside Cirrus. Through the helmet's visor, she could see human eyes. Brown. Warm. Filled with something she had never expected. Compassion. "Don't worry," the marine said. "We've got you. You're safe now." Cirrus began to cry. Not from fear. From relief. From gratitude. From the overwhelming realization that someone had come. Someone had answered. The humans were here, and they had brought the wrath of heaven with them. Warlord Desok had never known fear. He had crushed armies. He had broken worlds. He had watched civilizations burn and felt nothing but satisfaction. Now, watching his fleet die, he learned what fear truly meant. The human weapons made no sense. They violated everything he knew about warfare. Beams of twisted gravity that bent his ships into impossible shapes. Missiles that dodged and weaved like living things, hunting down targets with terrible patience. Railgun rounds moving so fast they punched through shields. Like they weren't there. His tactical display was a nightmare of red. Ships vanishing. Signals going silent. Crew screaming for help that would never come. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" The humans had been part of the Galactic Assembly for 3 centuries. They had registered their technology. They had shared their ship designs. Everything the galaxy knew about humanity said they were unremarkable. Primitive, even. Everything the galaxy knew was a lie. On the bridge of the Vengeance, and Meryl Vance conducted the battle like a musician conducting a symphony. Her orders were calm and precise. Her fleet moved as one organism. Every attack coordinated. Every defense perfect. "Status on the station?" she asked. "Marines have secured 3 sections," Captain Chen reported. "Heavy resistance from Kreth boarding parties. We're estimating 45 minutes to full liberation." "Kreth fleet status?" 400 ships destroyed. 200 disabled. The remainder are trying to regroup around their command carrier. "The big one? With the fancy decorations?" "Yes, Admiral." Vance studied the enemy flagship. It was enormous, covered in skulls and trophies from conquered species. The personal vessel of whoever was in charge of this slaughter. Focus fire on their command carrier. "I want their leader alive, if possible. He has questions to answer." Across the battlefield, human ships turned toward the Eternal Dominion. Desok watched them coming and felt his heart sink. "All ships, protect the flagship," he screamed. "Everything we have." His remaining fleet threw themselves between the humans and their warlord. It made no difference. The human dreadnoughts moved through them like giants through children. Smaller ships exploded. Larger ones were crippled and left drifting. A human railgun round struck the Eternal Dominion's engine section. The ship shuddered and began to spin. "Damage report," Dezok demanded. "Engines offline. Shields at 12%. Hull breaches on 17 decks." His officer's voice cracked with terror. "Warlord, they're boarding us." Dezok grabbed his ceremonial blade. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. On the station, the battle was more personal. Sergeant Major Kate Rodriguez led her squad through the station's corridors. They moved like ghosts, their powered armor making almost no sound. Every Kreth they found went down. Precise shots. No wasted ammunition. No hesitation. They found the holding areas first. Cages filled with Velthari. Some injured. Some unconscious. All terrified, Rodriguez removed her helmet. Her face was scarred, her eyes hard. But her voice was gentle. "Everyone stay calm. We're here to help. Medical teams are right behind us." A Velthari elder approached her. His body was covered in wounds from Kreth torture tools. His eyes were filled with confusion. "Why?" he asked. "Why would humans die for us?" Rodriguez thought about the question. She thought about her grandmother's stories about Earth's wars, about how humanity had spent centuries learning to protect the weak, about the promise they had made when they joined the galaxy. "Because you needed us," she said simply. "That's enough." Deeper in the station, another squad found the children. Private First Class Kenji Tanaka was the first through the door. What he saw stopped him cold. Over 100 Velthari children huddled in a corner. The youngest couldn't have been more than a few months old. The oldest were teenagers trying to protect the little ones. They all stared at the human soldiers with compound eyes wide with terror. Kenji's squadmates raised their weapons, scanning for threats. Kenji lowered his. He took off his helmet, slowly, carefully, let them see his face. His human face, with its strange flat features and single pair of eyes. Then he smiled. "It's okay," he said softly. "The monsters are gone. We're here now. No one is going to hurt you anymore." One of the older children crept forward. Her antennae twitched nervously. "Are you? The ones who answered the signal?" "Yes." The ambassador pressed a button. "We came. From how far?" Kenji tried to calculate the distance. "Very far." "Many stars away. Why?" It was the same question everyone kept asking. Why would humans cross the galaxy for strangers? Why would they fight and die for species they had never met? Kenji thought about his grandmother, about the stories she had told him about their ancestors, about the old code of Bushido, about duty and honor and protecting those who could not protect themselves. "Because that's what humans do," he said. "We protect people." He reached out his hand. The Velthari child hesitated. Then, slowly, she took it. On the Eternal Dominion, Dezok made his last stand. He fought like a demon. His blade carved through 3 Marines before they brought him down. Not with bullets, with stun weapons. They wanted him alive. Admiral Vance boarded the captured flagship an hour later. She walked through corridors littered with Kreth bodies and human blood. Her Marines had paid a price for this victory, but they had won. Dezok was on his knees in the command center. Energy restraints held his arms behind his back. His eyes burned with hatred as Vance approached. "Do you know what you've done?" He snarled. "The Dominion will never forget this. We will hunt your species across the galaxy. We will make you suffer for 1,000 years." Vance looked at him. This monster who had killed millions, who had enslaved billions, who had assumed no one would ever stop him. "No," she said. You won't. You can't kill me. Your precious rules of engagement. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to do something much worse. She leaned close. I'm going to let you live. I'm going to send you back to what's left of your dominion. And you're going to tell them what happened here. You're going to tell them that humanity protects its friends. That we have weapons you've never seen. That if you ever threaten another beacon holder, we will come for you. Not in centuries. Not in years. In hours. She straightened. The galaxy thought we were weak because we were kind. They thought we were harmless because we chose peace. They were wrong. Kindness is not weakness. Peace is not surrender. And when you threaten the people we love, we become something you've never faced before. What's that? Vesok spat, angry. Vance turned away. Get him out of my sight. Outside the viewport, the battle was over. The Kreth fleet was destroyed. The station was secured. Medical ships were already docking, bringing supplies and doctors for the survivors. Humanity had answered the call, and the galaxy would never forget it. The battle had been over for 3 days when Admiral Vance finally visited the station. Whispered Dawn was barely alive. Whole sections had been destroyed. The outer hull was scarred with weapons fire and breaching charges. But human engineers were already working, sealing the wounds, restoring power, bringing the station back from the dead. Cirrus Velan met the Admiral in what remained of the observation deck. The ambassador's legs were in medical braces. Her body was covered in bandages. But she was alive. Thanks to the humans, she was alive. Vance was smaller than Cirrus had expected. A short woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She looked like someone's grandmother, not like the commander of the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Admiral Vance, Cirrus said formally. On behalf of the Veltri Concord, I offer our deepest gratitude. Vance waved away the formality. How are your people? Recovering. We lost over 6,000 in the initial attack, but 2,000 survived. Because of you, we lost people too. 63 Marines. 6 ships. Cirrus felt the weight of that number. 63 humans had died for strangers. 6 ships had been destroyed protecting people they had never met. Why? She asked. It was the same question everyone kept asking. We have barely had contact with your species. We are not powerful. We are not strategically important. Why would you sacrifice so much for us? Vance was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the viewport at the stars. At the human fleet still holding position, guarding the station against any remaining threats. Ambassador, do you know what a pack is? Cirrus searched her memory. A group of Earth animals? Hunters who work together? Yes, wolves, dogs. Many Earth predators form packs. They hunt together. They raise their young together. They protect each other, even at the cost of their own lives. Vance turned to face her. Humans are pack animals. We evolved in a dangerous world. The only way we survived was by working together, by protecting each other, by treating our group like family. But we are not your family. Yes, you are. Vance's voice was firm. When you accepted our beacon 3 centuries ago, you became part of our pack. We didn't give those devices to trading partners or political allies. We gave them to family. She stepped closer to the viewport. The galaxy thinks humans are soft because we form emotional attachments. They think compassion makes us weak. They're wrong. Compassion is our greatest strength. It's what makes us fight harder than any other species. We don't fight for territory or resources. We fight for people. Cirrus thought about the Marine who had found her in the station, the way he had knelt beside her, the warmth in his eyes. She thought about the soldiers who had died clearing the corridors. The doctors who had worked without sleep to save Valkyrie lives did all for strangers. "The Kreth will seek revenge," she said quietly. "Let them." Vance's voice turned cold. "We've already sent a message to what remains of their dominion. We told them that every species with a beacon is under our protection. If they attack any of them, we will destroy them completely. Not their fleet, their entire civilization. They might not believe you. Then we'll show them." Vance smiled. It was not a warm smile. "We've been waiting for this moment for 3 centuries. We knew eventually someone would test the beacon system. We wanted them to, because we needed the galaxy to see what happens when you hurt the people we protect." Far away, in the great hall of the Galactic Assembly, representatives of 1,000 species watched the battle. Recordings in stunned silence. They saw human weapons that had never been registered, ships that had never been documented, technology that was supposed to be centuries beyond what humanity possessed. "They lied to us," the Korvax ambassador whispered. "All these years, they pretended to be weak." "Not pretended," the Silian delegate corrected. She was studying the recordings carefully. "They simply didn't show us their military technology. There was no requirement to do so. We assumed they were weak. They never actually said they were, but why hide it?" The Silian was quiet for a moment. Because they didn't want to be conquerors. They didn't want other species to fear them. They wanted to be seen as friends. On the screen, human Marines carried injured Valkyrie to safety. Doctors worked alongside alien medics without hesitation. Soldiers shared their food and water with strangers. "They're still friends," Basilian said. "They just showed us that friends can also be protectors." Across the galaxy, the news spread. The humans had answered a beacon call. They had destroyed an entire Kreth fleet. They had saved a species from extinction. On a dozen Kreth slave worlds, captives looked up at the sky and wondered. If the humans had saved the Valkyrie, could they save others? Could they be freed too? On 100 assembly worlds, leaders examined their own beacons with new respect. The little black devices they had laughed at suddenly seemed much more valuable. And on Earth, in a small apartment in Tokyo, an old woman received a message from her grandson. "Grandmother, I'm safe. We won. We saved them." She cried tears of joy and pride. Her Kenji, her brave, kind Kenji, he had crossed the stars to protect strangers because that was the kind of human he was. That was the kind of humans they all were. On Whispered Dawn, Cirrus Velan stood at the viewport and watched the human fleet prepare to depart. Medical ships had taken the wounded. Engineers had stabilized the station. The Marines had left gifts for the children and promises to visit again. Admiral Vance had said goodbye with a simple handshake, a human gesture of respect. "If you ever need us again," she had said, "just press the button. We'll come." And Cirrus believed her. She looked down at the beacon in her hand, the simple black device that had seemed so useless, that she had almost thrown away decades ago. It wasn't just a device. It was a promise, a connection to a species that had redefined what it meant to be civilized, a species that measured its worth not by the wars it won, but by the lives it saved. The human fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, thousands of ships vanishing in flashes of light, returning home to families and friends, to lives they had put on hold to answer a stranger's call. Cirrus held the beacon close to her chest. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were billions of humans, short-lived creatures with soft bodies and strange smiles, predators who had chosen to become protectors, warriors who fought for love instead of hate. She had spent her whole life believing that the galaxy was cold and cruel, that the strong consumed the weak, that no one could be trusted. The humans had proven her wrong, and as she watched the last of their ships disappear into the stars, she made a silent promise of her own. One day, when she was strong enough, she would find a way to repay them, to protect them the way they had protected her, to be worthy of the family they had given her. The stars were still vast. The galaxy was still dangerous. But Cirrus Velan no longer felt alone. Somewhere out there, the sleeping wolf was always watching. And if she ever needed them, they would come. They would always come.